We're here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, after about an hour long, is that about an hour, Urban Meyer news conference addressing every question basically that could be asked about his suspension and what exactly transpired with Zach Smith and Urban Meyer's handling of that situation. Again, we can't go forever. I get that, but it was an hour's worth of questions, and he pretty much dealt with what was put on the table, and I thought there were a lot of good questions asked. What was your overall feeling of Urban Meyer? Not just necessarily how he answered the questions, but this is Ohio State's football coach now. Again, what should people think about Urban Meyer?
I thought it was good. I thought it was good. I saw, as it was happening, I saw some stuff on social media that were, like, again, sort of saying an Urban Meyer media availability is a disaster, and it certainly was on the day he got suspended, and it was at Big Ten Media Days. I don't think this was. I thought that he answered pretty much everything. I think he took every question, or even sometimes we'll get in there and, like, he'll glance at the clock and, like, it's very clear he wants to be out of that room. I thought he was in the room the whole time, was not disengaged. If I'm an Ohio State fan, I would feel pretty good about the way he handled things. There are certain people who aren't Ohio State fans who are outside of this building who just aren't going to trust him anymore, and frankly probably didn't trust him before that, and I don't really think there's anything you can do about that. But I did think he took some decent steps to get some of his credibility back, in my opinion. Maybe I'm in the minority in thinking that. But I thought he did a decent job of answering what were some tough questions about a tough situation, and for the first time in all of this, like, provided some decent clarity on it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Some people, just like you said, are going to have their minds made up both ways on this, and I think we've seen that from the stories we've written, the reaction we've gotten from people. There are people who just don't think this was handled correctly, that he should have been fired. Some people think that. Some people think he did basically nothing wrong. And there's a lot of people in the middle. I think the thing you have to remember in the middle is that the middle is nuanced. The middle is confusing in life. That's why there's so much white and black in discussions, because the gray is hard. But there's gray. I mean, that life is lived in the gray. This was a complicated, confusing situation, and I think Urban Meyer, at the very beginning, before he even got to questions, sort of took us through a tick-tock of how he handled Zach Smith along the way. And in explaining how they did talk to investigators, they did deal with the police, they did talk to Zach about it, they didn't talk to Courtney because they feel that would be tampering. It's not their place to talk to Courtney. I thought there was reasonableness in there. Was it perfect? Urban Meyer says now if he could go back, he would ask more questions, and knowing what he knows now, he would have fired Zach Smith in 2015. But was it reasonable? I think there is reasonableness in there, and an effort to not just ignore something. And I think you and I, we've talked about this, we agree on this. The idea that if Zach Smith had ever been charged with domestic violence, Urban Meyer says he would have been fired. We believe that. We believe the idea that if you think he was an enabler, they didn't fire him because there were no charges. Is that the end-all, be-all in domestic violence? No, we know that. Sometimes things happen and you don't have charges. So that's where Urban Meyer says he needs to ask more questions. So I think it seems like he's learned that. Let's ask more questions. And you know what? I don't know. I think you could take him at face value. A lot of people aren't going to. And that's your right. That's fine. But I do believe that in general, Urban Meyer believes domestic violence is a serious issue, and I think specifically here, it was complicated, and that's it. I don't know that there's a lot more to that. They could have done things better. I think he explained the text messages. I think that's still a little weird. He's basically saying, I didn't do anything. I don't really understand my phone. They changed the setting, but he never had intent to hide text messages. That was a thing that popped up in the report. I still think the most troubling thing that remains that he's admitted to is the idea that he knew about domestic abuse allegations in 2009 at Florida. Gene Smith did not know about that. And Urban Meyer, when he hired Zach Smith in 2012, and then when it popped up again in 2015, he didn't tell anybody else at Ohio State that Zach Smith had another situation like this in 2009. I think that may have changed things, how Gene Smith would have handled things in 2009. Urban Meyer admits he should have told somebody. I think that was a mistake. And whether he was trying to protect Zach or hide something, or he just didn't think to do it, that was a clear mistake to me. But I think in a lot of ways, Urban Meyer presented a case that, okay, it's not ideal, but it's reasonable.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, so I don't want to repeat it. I guess the one thing that I thought coming into today could have happened is like I think we could have left here wondering like what's next, and I guess like anything could happen, but I'm not anticipating a what's next. I think he did a good job of covering everything, providing some clarity, and I do think in a lot of senses like the football program now is kind of ready to move forward. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they didn't end the press conference by saying, and we're never talking about this again. But I think if you try to revisit this next week, he might say, we already talked about that. But they were thorough today. They were thorough today. We weren't always sure that this day was going to come. I think it was important not to just do this on ESPN, but allow media outlets in Ohio who represent Ohio State fans, who represent the people of Ohio, to ask questions on behalf of the people of Ohio. And this is an Ohio story. It became a national story, but this is a story for Ohio. So they did that. And I think they had to, but I'm also glad they did. So we'll see going forward. I know a lot of you are tired of this. This had to happen today, and it happened. And at some point, yeah, we're all going to be back to football because you can't just live in the past. But this was an important day, I think, for Urban Meyer and Ohio State. Bill Landis, Doug Lesmerises, we're writing about it. You don't have to read it. We're going to write more about it, and then we're going to write about football too. We'll see you at cleveland.com.